Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head to Düsseldorf in Germany, and I'm finally going to review one of these famous German alt beer breweries for you today. So for this one we are going to go to Uerige Obergärige Hausbrauerei, if I've pronounced that correctly, and we're having a taste of the Uerige Doppelsticke today. Now this beer is quite interesting because it comes in 8.5%, which from my memory is actually quite heavy for an alt beer. But they say on the website this one was designed specifically for the American market. They make a specific comparison of this to the Sierra Nevada Bigfoot Ale and say that they view this beer as Germany's answer to the barley wine ale, which of course is a style that I really enjoy, but it's quite interesting to see a very traditional German brewery like this making a comparison to the kind of newer American beer market actually. But this one should be a really good beer. It's rated 98 overall on Rate Beer, 100 within the style, from a very famous brewery of course, and a lot of you guys watching in Germany have actually requested that I do some of these Düsseldorf alt beer, so I hope you guys watching there enjoy this review. And this was one of the small portiers that we got here in Sistia and Bologna very recently, so I'm sure it will be a very good one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Uerige Brauerei. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do subscribe to the channel. The whole channel uses a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city or state, whatever you're interested in. There is a playlist of the different beers from Germany that I've done before, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries you guys would like to see me review. Always interesting to hear from you guys, and your support is hugely appreciated. And do in particular let me know about some of the Düsseldorf beers that you guys would like to see reviewed on the channel. But I think I probably will have to go to Düsseldorf to get some of them. But anyway, as I mentioned to you, this brewery is from Düsseldorf in Germany, and it's one of the famous alt beer breweries. This one is actually on the corner of Bergestrasse and Rheinstrasse in the Düsseldorf Altstadt. So the house where this brewery started was actually built sometime during the 1600s, although they can't put an exact date on it. But from 1652 until 1783 it was owned by the Tricker family, and it was known as the Heidelberger Fass Inn, basically the Heidelberger Barrel Inn if you want to translate it into English. But the brewery changed hands many times after this. First it was owned by the Juppen family, who were wine merchants. It was then purchased by the Gruben family in 1790, and later by the Mertens family in 1800, and finally by Johann Bender in 1802, who owned it for a while, but he died in 1819. His widow then modernised and expanded the building, and it was then sold to Wilhelm Curtin in 1862, and his son Max took over, but he died at the age of only 41 years old in 1902, and then his widow rented the business and building out to Jean Keller, and then finally sold it to him in 1912. But the brewery became known as Uerige under his reign because Keller was known to actually always be in a very bad mood, and Uerige in the local dialect means basically to be in a bad mood, and there's quite a few breweries actually in Germany have these little local dialectal names, which is really quite cool. The other one that springs to mind of course is Schlenkerla from Bamberg, but this company of course completely different part of the country. But the company was then rented by Jakob Letz in 1934, and it was then sold in 1937 to Rudolf Arnold, who actually was in charge of the company for about 40 years. He was a brewmaster from Koblenz and originally from Saxony if I remember correctly, but during the Second World War the front house was destroyed by a bomb in 1943, and then the building burnt down completely following another air raid in 1944. After the war though, they immediately began reconstruction, which was completed in 1949, and there was another expansion later in 1951, and apparently there was a bit of a dispute with the local council over ownership of the land, and this meant that the brewery was actually closed for quite a period of time. I did see one source saying that it was about 10 years that this brewery was closed for, but they opened a new and larger brauhaus in 1974 on Rudolf's 85th birthday, and the brewery was then taken over by Christa and Josef Schnitzler, and Josef was actually from a very well respected brewing family. His sister Gertrude actually runs the Brauerei Schumacher on Ooststrasse in the city. This is another one of the very famous Düsseldorf alt beer breweries, but they put a lot of effort into actually kind of rebuilding the brewery behind the scenes, new tanks and infrastructure and all of this sort of thing. But since 1999 the brewery has been led by their son, who's actually a graduate engineer, and he designed the new Stickum house that they have. So if you go to the brewery these days, they've got a nice big glass facade thing. If you go in, and eat some of the food and things. It's a very traditional German brauhaus, of course, lots of pretzels and all of these sorts of things. There's traditional German food, but you can actually go in and see all the copper kettles where they're brewing the beer and watch the whole process actually. So it's meant to be a very, very cool place to go and visit, and hopefully I can get back to Düsseldorf and visit it sometime. I was there when I was quite young actually, before I could appreciate beer, of course. But of course, Düsseldorf is one of these regions in Germany that is very, very famous for the beers. As I say, the birthplace of the alt beer style. So yeah, if you find yourself in Düsseldorf, this is a place that you definitely want to visit. Schumacher, of course, is one that some of my viewers have recommended to me as well. So do check out some of these beers if you find yourself in that area of Germany. So just to list a few of the other beers these guys have, they do have a couple of different things. They've got the regular alt beer, the nicht filtriert one, which is obviously the unfiltered beer. They've got the Stike, the Doppelsticke, the Weizen, and they've got the original Fassboise as well, which is the non-alcoholic variety. I think there's two different types of that. There was two on the website when I checked it out earlier. But as I say, the brewery website's in the description below, and if you want to read more about the brewery yourself, you can do so. The website is mainly in German, but there is an English version up there as well, so just look at the top right hand corner. But anyway, yeah, that's enough about the brewery just now. Let's actually get on to the tasting of this beer itself. So really looking forward to this one. As I mentioned to you, this guy is an 8.5% alt beer. It was introduced in 2005 for the US market. It's hot with Spalt Spalte hops, Hallertau Perl and Spalt Hallertau. There's also a malt base of Pilsner caramels and roasted malt in there as well. So yeah, should be quite an interesting beer. As I said to you, it said on one of the sources I read that this beer was designed for the American market, so it should be quite an interesting one. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of it before we open up. As you can see, really quite nicely presented. You can see Uerige there. It's got the guy kind of climbing up in it there, enjoying a beer, just leaning. So quite nicely presented. There's the top label there, of course, as well. It's actually in English on the top, so that's how you can tell it's an export beer. Ale product of Germany. Uerige there, and Uerige, of course, is on the pop top on this one. This pop top style, of course, is a very traditional German style of bottle. So without further ado then, let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting then. So yeah, always love doing that with German beers. But like I said, the alt beer is a style that I didn't encounter too much when I was studying in Heidelberg. You'd really have to go more local to Düsseldorf to have a look at these styles. But I tell you something, you can really smell the lovely, the red fruity esters coming off this beer as you open up the bottle there. It really has quite a fruity aroma to it. So as you could see, and as you would expect actually, this beer pours a really nice mahogany sort of copper amber colour. There is a little bit of a kind of coppery edge to it. It's actually quite dark, and it's darker than I remember some of the other alt beers being. But it looks absolutely lovely. There's a few big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and quite a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of that head. That head, incidentally, I'd say it's a sort of creamy beige. It's got a very slight beige tinge to it, but there's a lot of little bubbles just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. There's some little particles of sediment floating around in there as well, which looks very, very nice. You can smell some of that lovely alt beer character on this one already. But yeah, let's have a closer look at the aroma of this one. So without sugaring up, as I say, from a distance you get these red fruity esters, a sort of figgy or kind of candied fruit thing from it. But when you go a bit closer, you do start to smell the caramel. It's got a really quite roasted caramel aroma to it, this one, which is what you'd expect from the alt beer, of course. It does smell quite dark and roasted in this way. It smells quite boozy. So let's sugar it up and see what else we can get out of it. Yeah, it actually starts to become more hoppy when you sugar it up a bit more. You start to get a bit of earthiness out of it. You can really smell those German noble hops in there. So there's a good bit of that noble earthiness in there. You can pick up a little bit of the sort of grassy or floral things, but mainly it's an earthy and slightly herbal character that's coming out of the hops on this beer. Now, it's really interesting in that way. But it smells absolutely lovely. You're getting some of the red fruity esters at the end, but really the aroma, it's quite bready. It reminds me a lot of the German rye bread. It really reminds me of that. I think that some people call it kind of pumpernickel bread, but I always just remember it as German rye bread. The aroma of this beer really reminds me of that. Then you've got the caramel sweetness on top, but you've also got that dark, more roasted element in there as well. And like I say, the earthy kind of noble hops coming out of this one. and some red fruity ester. The fruitiness on this one, it reminds me a little bit of the heart-shaped sweets that you get in the Haribo Star Mix. It's got that kind of red candied fruit ester to it. And then you've got the nice kind of more strong figgy things, but overall it's quite a strong boozy smelling beer. It's the hoppiness on this one is quite interesting too. But just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck in. But it smells very, very nice. So let's get stuck into this beer then. So this one is the Uerige Doppelsticke from Uerige Obergärige Hausbrauerei in the Altstadt of Düsseldorf. One of the famous Düsseldorf Alp beers. Prost! That's nice. That's a really nice beer actually. In a way, I can see the comparison with this one. I can see kind of what they're meaning when they say it's almost Germany's answer to the barley wine. From what I remember, the Alp beers, this one is quite dark and quite boozy. It's almost, in a way, you could almost say this is like an imperial barley wine or an imperial Alp beer, if that makes sense. It really does have that kind of feel to it actually, which is really interesting. It does have that sort of barley wine-ish feel to it. The Alp beers that I remember were always a little bit lighter. They weren't so dark in their caramel, and they had a little bit more fruitiness to them. But it's interesting nonetheless. I do wonder as well if you can actually get this beer in Germany, or whether it's one of these export-only ones. There are some beers in Germany that are like that. The other one I remember was the Spaten Optimator, was another one that was quite difficult to get in Germany. So if you're watching there, do let me know if you can actually get this beer, because I think, as I say, it was designed specifically for the US market. But yeah, that's really nice. As I say though, quite different from the Alp beers that I've had previously. So, the middle of your palate in this one, of course, you've got a huge bready malt base to this. It starts to come out a little bit more in the aftertaste. Initially, the beer is really quite boozy. You've got a lot of dark caramel in there. It's quite toasted, and it might even kind of be pushing the sort of treacle or molasses kind of thing. It's got a really dark brown sugar flavour to it, this one, and it's quite roasted. It's not as sweet as some of the other Alp beers that I've come across. But it's really nice. Underneath that you can feel the sort of German brown bread malt base there. It actually starts to come out a little bit more as the flavour progresses. It starts off with a big toasted caramel kind of thing going on, and then it just smooths out. As you move into the aftertaste, you can feel a little bit of the toasted roasty character just sitting in the middle of your palate, and then the smoothness from the bread just starts to push its way out. It's really interesting how it works actually. The fruity esters are quite interesting as well. If you just pay attention, behind the front curve of your tongue, you'll pick up that little oily bubble. And this is where you'll get the sort of red fruity esters. For me, this one, it's got a sort of figgy flavour to it, kind of figs coming out of this one, and a little bit of that red candied fruit ester that I was talking about, the one that reminds me of the Haribo Star Mix sweets. It has a little bit of that in it. But yeah, as the flavour progresses, you start to get more of the roasted character coming out. The hoppiness starts to come out a little bit more as your palate adjusts to the beer as well. So in the back corners of the palate, there's quite a bit of earthiness there. And as you come further forward on the sides of your tongue, you can feel more of the sort of herbal aspects of those noble hops. Maybe around the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit more grassy or something like that. But mainly the hop side of the beer is dominated by that earthy character, and then the herbal side of these noble hops on top of that. But overall, this is a really nice beer. As I say though, it is quite different from what you'd normally expect of an Alp beer. It's more like an imperial and more boozy Alp beer. It's got a lot, the sweetness from what I remember in this one is a lot darker and a lot more roasted, probably due to the higher alcohol content that's in the beer. really with this one, it's quite interesting to think about, because you've got the Doppelbock. If you think about the Doppelbock style of beer as well, this one is distinctively more earthy and roasted than a Doppelbock normally is. A Doppelbock, of course, is very sweet, so it's quite interesting to think about the comparison between this style and that style. Very, very different styles of brews, completely different in terms of actually brewing the beer, but that was just something that came into my head when I was tasting this one. It really is the kind of earthiness and the kind of bready character that sets this one apart, actually. The more roasty aspects to this as well are quite interesting, but like I say, it's almost like if you think about what you have in America when you have an IPA and then an Imperial IPA, think of a German alt beer and then think what would happen if you made it an Imperial beer. That's how this one really works, and I can see why they've designed this for the American market, because Americans love that when you just put more booze and more sugar and things in beer. So it works quite well in that regard, and you know, I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this beer again. I can see why it's really quite highly rated. And if you're comparing it to a barley wine though, it reminds me a bit more of the English version of the style. If you're thinking about the beer in terms of a barley wine, that's where it really sits. But overall, it's really nice. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this beer again, so if you get the chance, give it a go. In terms of the mouthfeel, this one, I'd say this is kind of mid to full bodied. It's got a big oily mouthfeel to it, this one, as you would expect. The carbonation is really quite smooth. Again, that's what you would expect from a German beer. I've always found that with German beers, that they're very, very smooth. There's a bit of sweetness to the malt base, but overall it's quite a roasted and syrupy character that you're getting from the malt base. And this one, there's a bit of dryness from the hops. Overall though, they are quite smooth, and there's a little bit of a red fruity ester to this one. But like I say, very, very nice beer. If you're interested in what this one's like, think a German alt beer and then think what it would be like as an Imperial. It is actually, in terms of the barley wines, they are comparing it to this one, but it reminds me a little bit more of the English barley wine rather than the American barley wine. But overall, very, very interesting beer, and it does make me want to try more of the beers from the brewery. So yeah, if you get the chance, check this one out and see how you get on. Really, really nice beer, and as I say, very cool to try my first example of one of the famous Düsseldorf alt beers, although this beer is quite a bit different from the regular style from what I understand. So yeah, as always, thank you for watching my beer reviews. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Do let me know in the comment section below your own thoughts on this beer and the brewery in the comment section below. Always interesting to hear from you guys. Like I said at the start of the video, those of you watching in Düsseldorf, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other alt beers from the city that I should be having a look at. Always interesting to hear from you guys. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Make sure you try this guy from Uerige Obergärige Hausbrauerei in Düsseldorf. Always cool to try new beers from different parts of Germany. I love German beer, so I'm sure I'll see you very soon with more beers from the country to review. Until the next time, it's Landry just now, and I'll catch you very soon. Make sure you check out the Doppelsticke from Uerige Brauerei in Düsseldorf. Prost!